On this segment of Is India a Democracy, we're taking a look at something that affects all of us, but most of us only understand it as much as people understand AI. We're talking about... Okay, I know what you're thinking. The executive branch? Really? I'd rather sit and watch paint dry in Bangalore traffic. But wait, it's actually really fascinating. This is a story of who holds power in the world's largest democracy, and it's not who the constitution initially suggests. The Indian executive branch is like a Bollywood dance number. The Prime Minister steals the spotlight as the hero, the cabinet ministers get their brief solo twirls, bureaucrats are the unsung background dancers keeping the rhythm, and just like any good Bollywood production, it is filled with dramatic flair, choreographed chaos, and everyone desperately hoping for audience applause instead of Rotten Tomatoes on election day. First, you have the president. But before that, hey guys, like, share and subscribe. First, we have the president. But because we already spoke about the president in detail in our last video, we'll just leave you with this. Remember when President Pranab Mukherjee signed over 30 ordinances in just 2 years? While that might sound impressive on an executive scale, in reality, that's like being assigned the electronic signature person at your office. Technically important, but here's the catch. You must act on the aid and the advice of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. And by aid and advice, I mean it is as pointless as your grandmother's suggestion for you to eat more. Although occasionally the president does get to flex their constitutional muscles. Hey, flex down! Like when President K.R. Narayan returned the recommendation to impose president's rule in Uttar Pradesh in 1997. It's like that quiet and nerdy colleague finally speak up in a meeting and surprise the shit out of everyone. Next in line is the Vice President. The Vice President of India has two jobs. One is chairing the Rajya Sabha and two is, well, waiting. Because being the Vice President is like being a wicketkeeper in a cricket match. Just standing there, but often crucial. But they also represent India on various international platforms, kind of like being our diplomatic ambassador at a global family reunion. Vice President Venkaiah Naidu traveled to over 25 countries during his term. More international trips than most of us can afford, even with all our credit cards combined. It's worth noting that unlike the American Vice President, who's just a heartbeat away from presidency, our VP doesn't automatically step into the PM's role even if something happens. They just become acting president if needed, like getting promoted sideways instead of upward. But now let's talk about who's actually running the show, the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister in India is less of a first amongst equals and more like that one team in a group project that does everything but still has to pretend that everyone contributed and they can all share credit. Our Prime Minister heads the Council of Ministers, advises the President, sets policy direction, introduces bills, manages crisis, and represents India internationally. So it's like being the CEO, HR person, PR person, and WhatsApp group admin all at the same time. Remember the 2016 demonetization? That was Prime Minister Narendra Modi coming out and saying, "Surprise, motherfucker," on national television, instantly invalidating 86% of the currency notes in circulation. Now that is power. When was the last time that your decision affected the wallets of 1.4 billion people? But I can't even get an auto without looking through 4 or 5 apps. When our constitution was being drafted, most powers were given to the president on paper. But our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, set precedents that made the PM position what it is today, a central figure in governance. In fact, the prime ministerial power has grown over time. Indira Gandhi wielded such authority during the emergency that she practically used the constitution like a TV remote, only clicking the buttons that she wanted to use. And compare that to the Prime Minister Deve Gowda, who reportedly dozed off at public functions so often that his staff had to schedule all his meetings before lunch. That's what the coalition era prime ministership looked like. All the responsibility but power that came and went faster than Mumbai's local trains. Moving on to bureaucracy, the real MVPs of Indian governance. While ministers come and go like the contestants on Bigg Boss, our bureaucrats, particularly the IAS officers, are the ones who actually keep the country running. They are like the supporting actors who outlast the hero in a Bollywood movie. Less glamorous but surprisingly durable. Take the Cabinet Secretary, India's highest ranking civil servant. This person coordinates between ministries, manages the bureaucracy, and basically knows where all the metaphorical bodies are buried across the administration. Former Cabinet Secretary TSR Subramaniam served under 4 different prime ministers. That's like being the only person who knows the Wi-Fi password when the management keeps changing. And don't get me started on the joint secretaries, the middle managers of governance, who actually draft most of the policies. Like when the GST bill was being prepared, it was these bureaucrats burning the midnight oil while ministers were taking credit on TV. I did it. Classic office dynamics, just with national consequences. Then we have the Council of Ministers, who had major ministries, ministers of state who actually assist them, and bureaucrats who ensure things get done. Kind of like how your office has a boss who takes credit, a middle manager who passes along the messages, and that one competent person who actually knows how everything works. Fun fact, India had 77 ministers in the UPA2 government. That is more than the entire Swedish parliament. We don't just have a minister of railways, we have a minister of state for railways. That's like not just manager, it's like assistant to the regional manager. Very bright stroke, very efficient. Now, India didn't just copy-paste our system from elsewhere. We're like that friend who downloads free software and then customizes it so much that even the original developers wouldn't recognize it. Unlike the UK, our parliament can actually strike down constitutional amendments, as seen when the Supreme Court developed the basic structure doctrine in the Kesavananda Bharati case. Take that, Westminster. And unlike the US president who stays in power even when their party loses Congress, our PM needs constant parliamentary support. Imagine if American presidents could get kicked out through a no-confidence motion. Their terms would be shorter than most Netflix free trials. But our executive branch doesn't operate in isolation. It's constrained by the parliament, which can vote no confidence faster than your relatives judge your life choice. 2. The Supreme Court, which can strike down unconstitutional actions like when it nullified the triple talaq practice despite government support. And 3. The federal structure. Trying to tell state chief ministers what to do is like asking an auto rickshaw in Bangalore to use the meter. Theoretically possible, but good luck with that. The center-state relationship is a whole drama series unto itself. When Tamil Nadu declares one policy and the centre another, it's like watching that uncle and auntie who don't speak directly but communicate through other family members at function. Remember when West Bengal CM Mamata Banerjee and PM Modi were having their public dispute? That wasn't just politics. That was our federal structure getting a live demonstration of creative tensions the constitution framers probably didn't anticipate. When no single party has a majority, prime ministers juggle coalition partners like street vendors balancing 20 chai glasses. Remember the 90s? We had 4 prime ministers in 6 years. The PM's chair was changing hands faster than hot samosas at a railway station. During the Janta Dal government, Prime Minister VP Singh hesitated to remove his own deputy PM fearing a government collapse. That's like not being able to unfriend someone on Facebook without your entire account getting deleted. And let's pour one out for our Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who lost a no-confidence motion by 1 vote in 1999. 1. That's like missing your train because you stopped to tie your shoelaces. What's fascinating is how much power actually depends on political capital. Strong leaders with huge majorities can push through reforms like GST or Article 370 revocation. Meanwhile, the coalition-era PMs often had the decision-making power comparable to substitute teachers on their last day at school. Look at the 2019 Article 370 decision. Regardless of your politics, you have to admit that was executive power flexing at its most dramatic. One morning, Kashmir had special status. By afternoon, India's map was being redrawn. That's like your parents remodeling your entire room when you just stepped out for chai. Compare that to Prime Minister Gujral, who spent most of his term just keeping coalition partners from walking out. His cabinet meetings were less about policy and more like a hostage situation. Unlike Germany's chancellor who operates with strict federal constraints, or Japan's prime minister who battles an entrenched bureaucracy, our PM can sometimes wield Thanos-level power with the right parliamentary majority. But compared to France's president, who has direct executive authority, our president is more like the king in chess, theoretically powerful but mostly moving one ceremonial square at a time. And unlike China, where the bureaucracy follows the party line strictly, our bureaucrats have perfected the art of slow-walking policies they don't like. It's called noting and drafting, the bureaucratic equivalent of replying, "Let's see," to a plan that you have no intention of implementing. So to recap, we have a president with theoretical powers but limited autonomy. That's like having computer admin rights, but someone else knows the password. 2. A vice president whose job security depends on simultaneously being visible and invisible. 3. A prime minister who runs everything alongside their council of ministers, the actual power players in this constitutional soap opera. 4. A bureaucracy that outlasts governments like that one Nokia phone that survives every drop. And finally, a federal system where states and center relate to each other like passive-aggressive neighbors in a housing society. This system is uniquely Indian, taking elements from Britain's parliamentary model but adapting it to our political reality. It's like how we took cricket from Britain but added IPL cheerleaders and Jio sponsorships. In the end, the Indian executive branch is like our traffic system, seemingly chaotic to outsiders, somehow functional despite itself, and requiring both written and unwritten rules to understand and navigate successfully. And remember, the next time you're frustrated with governance, just think, somewhere in Delhi, there's a bureaucrat who's been dealing with these politicians since before you were born, and they'll probably still be here when your grandchildren are complaining about whatever holographic government we have in the future.